Dear patrons, I've had the pleasure of knowing our next company for the past 12 years, and it has been one incredible transformation since then. Nothing brings me greater pleasure in life than watching a small local company go from idea to experiment in labs to identifying a unique micronutrient, creating a flagship product, and now changing the world for the better. The co founder and I became close from the get go, and it was clear to me that ChromaDex, ticker CDXC, was doing something special. Many of you know the story because of its blockbuster, True Niagen, which focuses on increasing NAD levels, which allows people to have more energy, sleep better, improve the health of their cells, and my personal favorite, combat stress. It is all about aging better when all is said and done. I've been taking True Niagen for several years now, and it's probably one of the big reasons I haven't lost all my marbles dealing with the daily volatility of the LD micro index as of yet. It has been an easy decision. It has been an easy decision for me because management has always been focused on science, spent millions upon millions of dollars conducting studies over the years, and now has a large and active base of clients that swear by what the product does for them. Just 2 weeks ago, the company announced that Walmart will carry True Niagen in all 3,000 of their stores beginning in June, echoing the belief that the product is one of the most important dietary supplements to come out in years. Joining us on the call today to discuss recent developments, areas of future focus, and why my face is not featured alongside Gabby Reese and NFL Hall of Fame member Shannon Sharp, it is my utmost pleasure to welcome Rob Fried, the CEO of ChromaDex, and CFO Kevin Farr. Gentlemen, it was a joy and pleasure catching up with you guys back in October. Congratulations on the recent developments. The floor is now yours.
Thanks very much, Chris. We've enjoyed getting to know you as well over the years, and we've appreciated your support and your unique understanding of the ingredient in the business here. ChromaDex has been a very interesting case study, a business case study. It was formed 20 years ago and was a very strong science-based company. It was initially an analytical testing service, then a consulting service, helping companies to get regulatory approvals around the world of their new ingredients, and then added an ingredient business. But it was more or less a service business and was operating for many years, very small microcap with small growth, but excellent science. That ingredient business, because of their great science, developed a product, built a strong patent portfolio, and got regulatory approvals on something called nicotinamide riboside, which is a blockbuster in the ingredient business. It's a blockbuster not only because of the amount of science behind nicotinamide riboside, but also the addressable market. Nicotinamide riboside is very unique because we understand mechanistically what it does. When you take nicotinamide riboside orally, it very quickly elevates the level of nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, NAD, in your cells. And it does it safely, and it does it extremely efficiently. And that is very exciting because NAD has been known for many decades to be a vital coenzyme in almost every important metabolic process inside the cell. In particular, the energy metabolism process, mitochondrial function, the ability to convert nutrients from food and oxygen from air into energy, or ATP, as it were, as well as the ability to repair damage inside the cell, are two processes that are extremely NAD dependent. Right when you're born, the body experiences damage. Cells are damaged. When you work out, it's damaged. When you drink, it's damaged. When you go out in the sun, it's damaged. When you have an infection, the cells are damaged. But we have this extraordinary ability when we're young to repair that damage. The current thinking in the aging industry presently, from the World Health Organization, as well as the Buck Institute and other leading thinkers in aging, is the definition of aging is the accumulation of damage at the cellular and molecular level and the diminished ability to repair that damage. When you can elevate NAD safely, efficiently, and quickly, you're improving your body's ability to repair damage at the cellular level. In addition, you're improving the body's ability to manufacture energy. inside the cell, mitochondrial function. So nicotinamide riboside is a very, very special thing. So the challenge was what to do with it. 5 years ago, I was a board member at ChromaDex and an investor in ChromaDex. And our thinking at the board level was maybe the thing to do is to create our own consumer brand, not to supply it to other companies, but we have a deep patent portfolio around this. Maybe the game here is to create a consumer-facing company in addition to the great science company that was in place. And that's what we endeavored to do. I joined the company in 2017, and we launched True Niagen as our consumer product that year. And this chart in front of you shows what the sales projection has been since then. The company overall did about $2 million in corporate sales the first quarter in 2017. And last quarter, we did $15.3 million in overall sales. Obviously, the vast majority of it is now True Niagen sales. So we have succeeded in a few years in creating a global consumer brand. We now sell mostly online in the US, but in retail in Hong Kong, Macau, Singapore, now the UK, Canada, and we sell cross-border online into China, Japan, and the EU. Awareness for NAD has grown dramatically, and we've invested quite a bit in R&D. In the last few years, the amount of scientific research that's come out in support of nicotinamide riboside and NAD has been extraordinary. You guys may have seen recently 2 studies that have come out, one on non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, showing a therapeutic benefit to True Niagen or nicotinamide riboside to that. And then very recently, a study on a phase 3 clinical study in Turkey on 300 mildly or moderately symptomatic coronavirus patients who received a cocktail of dietary supplements, including 2 grams a day of True Niagen. And it showed a 40% reduction in time to recovery from the placebo group. And of course, as Chris mentioned, we recently announced that Walmart is going to carry True Niagen starting in June. They had initially wanted to place it in initially 800, then 1,000. We had announced 3,000 stores. They've actually just recently upped it. We haven't to 3,800 stores. So with that, I'm going to leave time for Kevin to give a little highlight on the finances and leave plenty of time for questions. So thank you, Chris. Let me hand it over to Kevin.
So Rob highlighted the strategic progress we've made since pivoting the business to focus on True Niagen in the first quarter of 2017. I'll briefly highlight the financial progress. Over that period, we've grown revenues of approximately 50% annualized, expanded gross margins from 48% to 60%, and we're approaching break even in the underlying business, excluding legal expense. We've accomplished all this while we strengthened our leadership team and delivered cost savings across our supply chain and our organization. For the full year 2020, we delivered total net sales of $59.3 million, a 28% year-over-year increase, with True Niagen growth of 31%. We achieved gross margin of 60%, up from approximately 56% in the prior quarter. Lower selling and marketing expenses as a percentage of net sales, an increase of only $2.7 million versus our outlook of it being up $3.5 million, and a decrease in general and administration expense of approximately $500,000 versus our outlook of increase of $1.2 million. The underlying business is measured by adjusted EBITDA, excluding legal expense, a non-GAAP metric, posted a full year loss of $1 million versus a loss of $8.8 million in full year 2019. Since we pivoted to build a consumer product business, we've demonstrated strong operational and financial discipline while balancing growth with underlying profitability. Our outlook for 2021 is we expect to deliver continued steady top line growth. We expect modest gross margin improvement to slightly better than 60%. We expect that selling and marketing expense and R&D will be roughly flat as a percentage of net sales. And lastly, we expect that G&A, excluding severance and restructuring expense and legal expense, will be up slightly in absolute dollars year over year. A key objective this year is to deliver positive adjusted EBITDA, excluding total legal expense, while investing more in marketing and R&D to capture the growth in the NAD global marketing. Thank you. Now we'll take questions.
Thank you, guys. So let's begin. I want to kind of go back to understanding the history of ChromaDex and how it has truly transformed itself within the last 3 to 5 years. Rob, when did you guys start realizing that this NAD was a big deal and with the development of True Niagen? What was kind of the founding roots of that?
Well, of course, that goes back to the late 1990s. The research on anti-aging really kicked in the 90s with work on telomeres and telomere lengths. That evolved. The biochemists that were studying aging pivoted away from telomeres towards something called sirtuins. And there was an ingredient called resveratrol that at one time was believed to have a positive impact on the sirtuin genes, which are often referred to as longevity genes. But there was one mouse experiment that was heavily touted, and there was a Harvard scientist that appeared on 60 Minutes in 2020 touting his science, and they built a company that they sold to Glaxo for $700 million on one mouse study, which they were never able to replicate. They were never able to replicate in mice or humans. But the thinking behind it of a molecule that might have an impact on the way cells age was established. That research pivoted away from sirtuins and more towards this idea of NAD. And that happened really around 2010, 2009 and 2010, when the thought was, well, NAD is a known molecule and it declines under stress and it declines with age. If we could find a way to elevate NAD, maybe you could activate sirtuins, maybe you could elongate telomeres, and maybe you can repair cellular damage. And it turned out that elevating NAD worked. It worked. So then the key was, what's the best way to elevate NAD? And nicotinamide riboside had already been discovered at Dartmouth in the early 2000s as a dramatic elevator of NAD. ChromaDex had this patent portfolio around this ingredient that elevated NAD. So around 2012, 2013, it became this event where researchers all over the world closed in on ChromaDex saying, can we study it? Can we study it? Can we study it? You know, if you're a company with an ingredient and you get 10 phone calls from research institutes saying, you have an ingredient, can we study it? You have an exciting ingredient. You hit a home run. But since 2013, ChromaDex has signed over 220 agreements with prestigious research institutes around the world, investigating NR at their expense. It's a very unique find. So it's around that time that things happen, and it was clear that there was an opportunity here. The question is, did we have the capital? Did we have the human resources? Did we have the strategy to do it? It takes some time to make such a change, but you're starting to see the fruits of this effort now in the last year, I would say.
So I wanted to add, there was a famous book called How Not to Die. And I received it as a Christmas present. And for full disclosure, everyone, I stopped after reading the first 85 pages because I didn't do anything that this doctor was telling you that you should do in your life to have an extended, period of life, extended life. And what you mentioned, Rob, is exactly what he was talking about. So let's talk about the science. How much money has ultimately been deployed into this? Because, historically speaking, nutraceuticals, there's a lot of marketing that goes into the product and very little on science. And I always felt that was what was distinctive about ChromaDex, the amount of money that you poured into it. Tell us about the history there and where a lot of that R&D money is being spent today.
You're right. ChromaDex has invested a lot of R&D money, unique amount of R&D money for a dietary supplement company. A lot of that has been in developing processes for manufacturing a safe form of NR, as well as getting regulatory approvals and some scientific research in order to make claims. But mostly it's about proving its safety. The efficacy, the claims part of the research generally is done by outside institutions. And we provide the ingredient to them and they do the research themselves. It could be as much as $150 or $200 million of research over the last 7 or 8 years that's been committed, because you're talking about 225 studies and 55 of which are now clinical studies that are on clinicaltrials.gov, 11 of which have now been published. But that capital investment hasn't come from ChromaDex. It's come from these research institutions, and we simply supply the ingredient.
Has there ever been a research institution that basically said that this doesn't work? And what were their findings based off of that?
There have been no research institutions that have said this doesn't work, but there have been studies that have not hit their primary endpoints.
Understood.
It is very easy to hit a primary endpoint with a mouse because it only lives a certain period of time. And during the period of time that you're studying the mouse, you control all of the influences on its existence, what it eats, when it sleeps, what else it's exposed to. But with a human, it's a little different. And when you do a 6-week study or a 12-week study on a human being who's living their life, it's hard to know if blood pressure changes during those 8 or 12 weeks is because of True Niagen or it's because of some other thing going on in their life. So there have been studies where there's been a pursuit of something like a weight loss or a blood pressure or glucose level in the blood where the result didn't hit what they were hoping to hit. But in all cases, there have been secondary endpoints or other biomarkers that you look into the data that say something special is going on here. This is not an ingredient that you're peeing out. It's doing something. And so the knowledge has advanced with each study that's come through. And what you're starting to see now are more and more clinical trials that are actually hitting the primary endpoints, which is hard to do for anything, for a drug, for a supplement, for any molecule.
Understood. This was the only question that was actually asked twice, and I think it's timely. What does it mean that Niagen is the world's first and only FDA-reviewed form of NR? What does that exactly mean, and what connection does the FDA have on this?
So in the early 90s, a law was put in place called DSHEAS, which defined what is required of a dietary supplement to make sure that there isn't an FDA approval process like a drug. What they have is something called an NDI, a new dietary ingredient notification, where you have to apply for notification that this is an official ingredient that is safe to be taken as a dietary supplement. And ChromaDex has received 2 of those NDIs for nicotinamide riboside at 2 different doses, the most recent being a 300 milligram dose. The problem has been that you have molecules being sold in the marketplace that don't have the FDA NDI, but the FDA doesn't really have the budget to enforce it like they would on the drug side. We wish they would like to, but so you have a proliferation of ingredients out in the marketplace right now that don't have the proper safety studies or regulatory approvals from the FDA, yet are still being sold.
Understood. So let's do this. Let's start going into some of the questions that have been asked, because we have quite a few. Fatty liver disease is sadly a huge deal here in the States. What does True Niagen exactly do in this aspect?
Well, there are many preclinical studies, and now there's one public clinical study on non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. There are many preclinical studies and mouse studies that show a benefit to the reduction of fat in the liver when you take True Niagen specifically in the liver. There's also preclinical studies on alcohol-related liver disease, cirrhosis of the liver and others. One area where we think True Niagen, nicotinamide riboside, may be most effective is in liver-related disorders. So that study was made public just a few weeks ago, and there's another study out of Turkey that also was a combination cocktail. It wasn't just True Niagen. It was True Niagen plus 3 other dietary supplements, but it was 2 grams of True Niagen in this cocktail. So we do think that there's something to the liver story with nicotinamide riboside.
Understood. Nutraceuticals historically have had a bad rap in terms of marketing and efficacy. Do you guys have competitors currently that are mimicking what True Niagen does?
The NAD thing is taken off. I mean, the people around the world are getting hip to the idea that elevate NAD, it'll improve your health, particularly when you're under physiological stress, and getting old is one heck of a physiological stress.
You're telling me, you're telling us. So this is a question in relation to that, Rob. NAD has been shown to decline with age and metabolic stress. What is the main reason for this? I thought it was a good question.
So there's an engine. There are a couple of known pathways for the creation of NAD inside the cell. And there are some ingredients that can be helpful. They are also vitamin B3s like tryptophan, nicotinic acid, niacinamide, can increase NAD levels. You also can increase NAD levels from certain foods that you eat. But what Dr. Brenner at Dartmouth discovered is not only does nicotinamide riboside dramatically increase NAD levels, but he identified the specific pathway, which he named the NR kinase pathway, when a cell is under physiological stress, that opens up under physiological stress, which is not what the other pathways do. So the cell is actually calling out for specifically nicotinamide riboside, not any other ingredient, not NAD, not nicotinic acid, not something called NMN, none of those. It's specifically nicotinamide riboside that the cell is calling for when it's in physiological stress. And this is a brand new pathway. But the engine for making NAD within the cell actually declines with age. It becomes less efficient. But when you take NR, it actually bypasses that traditional engine and it comes up with a new pathway that more efficiently leads directly to NAD.
There was a couple of questions about intellectual property, how many patents we have, how historically we've enforced them in the past. Rob, can you give us some color as to what the patent portfolio looks like and what your mindset is in terms of enforcement?
First of all, these are great questions. So whoever you got, Chris, they're smart. Hope they're smart enough to take True Niagen. I'm not going to say that they have to be smart enough to buy the stock. I'm going to leave that for their own call. But if you take anything from this call, take True Niagen.
I want to tell you guys this, Rob, very quickly. I don't take anything, pretty much. I don't even take an aspirin. So it took me a long time to ultimately be convinced that this works. And I'm telling anyone who's listening, and I've asked a lot of my friends who are older, there is a huge change between 17, 27, 37, and 47. There is, in terms of energy levels, in terms of mental acuity. Trust me. I mean, my entire life, my goal was to be a professional tennis player, okay, which takes a lot of physical energy. And then I started seeing a decline in my late 20s, and I know that my 40s are probably not going to be any easier. So with that, that's why I got involved in a big way, because I saw that cause and effect. And I wanted to say, in terms of food, and maybe you can disagree with me, but in the book, they were really fond of Brazilian nuts. Do you take those, or you're passing on that?
No, I don't take Brazilian nuts.
Okay, because he talked about nuts for about 5 pages. So in that aspect, if anyone wants to kind of help themselves, Brazilian nuts, 5 a month have shown that they help you. But let's go back to IP.
Okay, so ChromaDex has 20 patents in and around this area. There are 3 really major ones. 2 are from Dartmouth, and those 2 Dartmouth patents are protect us from anybody trying to sell nicotinamide riboside for the purpose of elevating NAD. And companies have challenged those patents. It went to the patent review office and were upheld. There are companies manufacturing outside the US and importing nicotinamide riboside and selling it and infringing on the patents. We are in lawsuits against these companies. There's also a process patent that ChromaDex developed the process for manufacturing the crystallization process for making it. Grace applied for and has the patent, but we have an exclusive arrangement with Grace. There are also companies infringing on that patent, the process patent. And there are also many method of use patents that ChromaDex has applied for and either has already received or will hopefully soon receive. So it is a strong patent portfolio, but we understand that we need to protect what we have. And so it is one of the issues with use of cash has been litigation. We are and will continue to go after infringers. Look, anytime you have something exciting, you have human beings. You know, I happen, just for out of curiosity, I looked up the other day, there are approximately 5,000 federal statutes and 300,000 federal regulations on the books. 300,000 that ladder up to like a federal crime. In other words, there are a lot of things that people do that's wrong. And it's disappointing that in the healthcare space, people would do things like this, but it happens. And ChromaDex is not one of those companies. We are very vigilant. We are very careful. We go through it, everything we do, very science-based and very particular. That's why it's a pretty expensive vitamin. But there are other companies that try to cut corners. And we are going after those companies and protecting what our shareholders own.
Respect. So this next question is about the manufacturing of True Niagen. Where do you guys ultimately make the product, and what are you looking at in terms of scale right before the Walmart rollout, national rollout?
We have a deal with Grace, WR Grace. They make it in their plant in Oregon. It's US made, manufactured. They are equipped for large levels of production and scale. It's an excellent outfit. They're prepared to expand to multiple locations if needed. I want you to understand that even though it's expanding into Walmart, our expectations is it's going to be a slow. We don't think that there's going to be some big dramatic sales event in June or, you know, even this year. We will increase our advertising in connection with that launch. But we're not just going to blitz it out. Like everything we've done, it will be methodical, slow, and careful.
And then there was another question in regards to Walmart. Have you guys disclosed what SKUs will be available in the stores and at what the average price points will be?
Yes, we have disclosed that, right, Kevin?
Yes.
So there are going to be two SKUs. One will be the traditional 300 milligram 30-day supply SKU, which you could buy on Amazon or TrueNiagen.com presently. And then there will be a new SKU, which we have not yet introduced, which is a 100 milligram capsule and a 30-day supply. And that will be priced at $19.95. That's a much lower dose version of True Niagen, but the science shows that even at 100 milligrams per day, there's a dose response elevation of NAD levels. So we see it as a less expensive way in to True Niagen.
So Rob, just for the people that are new to the story, essentially, how do you take True Niagen? Is it just one pill a day? And in terms of purchasing it, what are they? Are they 60 pills per capsule and 100 pills per capsule per bottle?
So we offer it in many different forms. Kevin and I tend to take a gram a day. Yeah, but the recommended dose is 300 milligrams a day, which is one capsule for our basic bottle. Now, some people that we do also sell a version on Amazon of 150 milligram capsules, and people could take 2 a day. But some people prefer to take a lower dose of 150 milligrams. Many people take more. The science suggests that up to a gram a day, there's a dose response efficacy. And if people take this thing for a couple of months, they'll start to notice changes. They'll notice changes in their recovery from their workouts and the way they sleep and their energy levels from the way they live their lives. They'll notice things like fingernail growth. They'll notice things like dreams. That's dreaming is something that happens relatively quickly to people who you start to sleep deeper and you therefore dream. So we take a higher dose. In the COVID study in Turkey, it was 2 grams a day, but these are people who are actually symptomatic COVID patients. But the recommended dose is 1 capsule, 300 milligrams per day.
Understood. And then last question for you, Rob, and then I'm going to switch to Kevin in 1 second. Can you talk about ChromaDex outside of True Niagen? What are you guys excited about? Do you see anything outside of True that is going to be a big revenue generator in the years to come?
Yes, we have a very exciting pipeline of mostly NAD-related molecules that we've developed and patented. We're also investigating formulation products, combination products of Niagen plus other ingredients that we think are great. But it's really important to us that we stay focused. We don't want to be, this is a wonderful opportunity. We think this is a chance to really make many people healthier and expose them to something really new and great. So we're not in any hurry to do that, but we do have some excellent products in development behind it.
And I had to talk about this, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it, Imulina. There was a couple questions about what exactly Imulina is, and then did sales ultimately increase with the pandemic, given the fact that it boosts your immune system?
Yes, actually. ChromaDex, as I said before, initially was an ingredient company, and we had 4 or 5 ingredients, including nicotinamide riboside and Imulina. Also, there was pterostilbene, purple corn. There were 4 or 5 really interesting ingredients that ChromaDex was supplying, and we continue to supply, although we don't emphasize. And yes, Imulina, there is some research that suggests Imulina has a positive benefit on the immune system, and we started receiving some orders. But it is not the primary focus of the business, not at this time.
Understood. And then is Imulina sold on retail shelves, or is it mostly online?
Actually, most of the Imulina sales are international sales. There hasn't been much interest from consumer brands on Imulina in the United States.
Rob,
it's ingredient sales. So basically, we sell it to other resellers of vitamins. So and they basically sell it whatever platform they're on.
So Kevin, the next few questions are going to be for you. So let's do the hard ones first. In terms of profitability for the company, what is your mindset on that? Because historically, ChromaDex has never made any money. Would just love to hear your comments on that.
Yeah, I think profitability is a key metric that we're trying to achieve, and I think we've made great progress on that over the last couple of years. When you talk about our EBITDA excluding legal, you see improvements in the underlying business driven by top line growth, which has been 50% annualized. With regard to gross margins, we've improved them from 48% in 2017 to almost 60% in 2020. And I think with regard to marketing efficiency and SG&A, we've been very disciplined about that. So last year on that metric, we lost $1 million. That was an improvement from $9 million approximately in 2019. And I think as we look forward, we're trying to get to a place where we're cash flow break even, including legal. We previously said that's about 19 million in top line sales in a quarter. It's going to be a little higher now because this year we're trying to switch a little bit, and we'll probably be in a place where the growth rate should be a little higher. And we would still, as I said in my closing comment, we're targeting positive EBITDA excluding legal in our metric this year. And again, I think we're trying to balance both top line with getting to profitability. And we just raised another 25 million. So we've got a clear line to cash flow break even the overall company. We've got enough cash for that.
That is the most important metric when it comes to micro cap, small cap in my eyes, just that cash flow break even where you can showcase sustainability. So here's the next question that kind of goes to what you said last. In terms of cap structure, How has it changed over the last year or two? Does the company have any preferred shares or warrants outstanding?
No, it's all common stock. We have not done any raises with any type of other equity, like warrants or anything like that. So we've got a straight capital structure. We've got no debt. We've got a strong balance sheet. We just raised another 25 million. So if you look at our year-end results, we ended the year with $16.7 million of cash. And with regard to that capital raise of 25 million, we've strengthened the balance sheet so we can invest more and hopefully grow faster.
So I've noticed that gross margins have been improving. Congrats on that. Where is that improvement coming from? Is that based off, efficiency? Is that based off scale? And do you see more improvement coming in the next 12 to 18 months? Thank you for the question.
Yeah, I think where does it come from? I think first and foremost, it's come from our DTC business in selling our consumer product, True Niagen. If you look at our segment reporting, our product, average product for both DTC and with respect to retail, which is mostly Watson's in Hong Kong, those margins are about 60%, but the DTC margins are much higher than that, probably over 70%. So it's really mixed. If you look at, True Niagen as percentages total sales, it's about 80% of our total sales, and most of that's done on our DTC. And then we've also reconfigured the products to make them cost less. So for instance, a few years ago, when you took a 90-day supply, it was in 3 bottles. Today it's in 1 bottle. So we, reduced the bottle cost, as well as, the shipping packaging is smaller. And we've, reduced packaging, and also with regard to some of our CMOs, we negotiated better prices. So I think those are the key drivers of getting to where we're at today. And I do think there's more to be to occur because of basically getting scale on manufacturing of the ingredient, as well as, I think we have continuing areas in the supply chain that we can improve our efficiency and effectiveness, some of that through using IT to be more productive. And I think for 2021, we've indicated we expect it to be slightly higher than 60%. And I do think there's a continued opportunity to move that into the mid-60s over time.
So this is a question that focuses on True Niagen. In terms of the average price point on True Niagen, how has that changed since inception a few years ago?
Well, I think it's been pretty consistent. I don't know if you want to talk about that, Rob, but we've tried to make it not a luxury price product, but a premium price product by building the brand. And I think over time it's been relatively stable in our pricing, particularly on the DTC business, as well as on the retail business, and as well as on the ingredient business.
And of course, I have to bring this up: the necessary evil, legal. Is on the legal side, is it mostly internal, the cost from ChromaDex? Are we using any outside firms? And again, what was that number, in the last year or so?
Yeah, I think it's all being managed except for, general counsel managing outside legal firms. So that is a expense. It's been averaging 2 to 3 million per quarter. Last year, the total expense was about 8.5 million. But, because of COVID and the delay in the court cases, it was down from about 11.5 million in 2019. We do have 3 cases scheduled for 2021. There's the patent case, which is expected to be in September. There's the California case, which has a trial date in September also. And the New York case, the judge is telling us with regard to be ready in August within 48 hours to potentially prosecute that trial date. So, this thing has been moving because of COVID, so we're not sure that that's all going to happen. It's been pretty dynamic, but again, we need to protect our intellectual property vigorously. We are doing that, and hopefully we can get this spending behind us, because I'd love to redirect that spending to marketing and growing faster. But we need to protect our intellectual property.
And I thought this was a great financial question. Who are the guys at Watson's Hong Kong, and how big are they in terms of a revenue basis for ChromaDex on an annual basis? Thank you for the question.
Yeah, it's about an $8 million business. In 2020, it was about 7.3 million in 2019. And Watsons are great partners, and basically we entered into this agreement in September of 2017. We launched it in Hong Kong, and they have built the brand, and they've been great partners to us.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm going to go back to Rob. Rob, if you'd be so kind to unmute.
Unmuted.
Awesome. So look, I wanted to talk about the 800-pound gorilla, which is Nestle. For those who don't know, Nestle is the largest food company in the world. Tell us about that relationship and what they're doing with ChromaDex. And then what we'll do is, for all the people that have asked questions on the Q&A, we'll start answering those one by one. So stay patient, guys.
Well, Nestle is the largest food company in the world. Their great strength is R&D. And they have some of the best NAD researchers in the world that they work with. They know that NR is a very unique and special ingredient. And they also know that some of the molecules that we have in development behind NR are also very exciting ingredients. So the Nestle science team knows what ChromaDex has extremely well. At the time, ChromaDex was thinking, you know, it's going to cost a lot of money to create awareness globally for NAD and for Niagen and nicotinamide riboside in particular. So we chose to do a deal with Nestle where we actually supplied the ingredient and let them create their own brand, consumer brand. We thought that 1 + 1 would equal 6. They did create their own brand called Celtriant that is circled around nicotinamide riboside, the idea of cellular health. They launched it a few months ago. It's still very early. They haven't really done much by sales. They're beginning their marketing this year. They also own many subsidiaries that are interested in nicotinamide riboside. They have dietary supplement subsidiaries, food subsidiaries, all of whom are interested in working with us as a supplier of nicotinamide riboside. And we are in discussions with them. We did a deal with one division called Persona, which is personalized dietary supplement division that they have. They brand it True Niagen, what they sell. Branding is an issue. We need to make sure that if they are going to create a consumer brand, that True Niagen is still properly displayed. Interestingly, over time, Nestle wants more True Niagen in the branding, as they realize that people are understanding that if it says True Niagen, it's the real deal. It's the one with all the safety studies and the regulatory approvals and the patents. So what initially was a relationship where they wanted less True Niagen in the branding packaging, now they want more, which we see as a very good sign and a good indication. The relationship between the two companies is excellent. They want more Niagen and nicotinamide riboside. We're careful on how we supply it. Our primary goal is to build a global brand here. So we're careful with to whom we make those kinds of arrangements. And you know, obviously, in the early days, ChromaDex supplied it to some companies who were quite not good partners. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Nestle has been a good partner.
To me, Rob, it's the ultimate. And this is me talking to you. I don't know if you can comment on this, but I'm assuming that there were a lot of people that wanted to partner up with you guys, and you're very methodical. You thought about this long and hard, and then you decided to go with Nestle. Is that correct? Is that true? That
was true and is true. There are still many companies that want nicotinamide riboside, and we're open to any meeting. We'll take a meeting with anybody, but it's difficult to get ChromaDex to supply nicotinamide riboside. I mean, we've been burned in the past. And so we wanted to be a partner that is not going to use our science to build their distribution platform. If they have a distribution platform and they're a responsible company that actually pays their bills and doesn't try to actually take the technology from us, and we can come to some sort of a co-branding arrangement, then we're open to it. And there are also certain categories that we have no plans to develop a consumer product, like pet nutrition, for example, or infant nutrition. These are areas that we are open-minded about creating partnerships in.
So final question from the LD Micro contingency, we'll go to the Q&A in a second. Internationally, the company doesn't really get a lot of mention. I know that you guys were the most favorite brand for the second year at Watson's Hong Kong, which I think is a big deal in Asian markets. I mean, can you kind of clarify and quantify what the strategy is international and why you think that the Asian contingency is resonating with the product in a big way?
You know, just to put it into perspective, Kevin mentioned that the Watson's Hong Kong business was close to $8 million last year. The population of Hong Kong is 7 million people. And you're talking $8 billion wholesale. We're selling it to them wholesale. So let's say it could be a $15, $20 million retail business in Hong Kong for a population of 7 million people. It is a big deal in Hong Kong, True Niagen. The awareness level is very, very high, and the percentage of the population that's taking True Niagen is extremely high. But why we think that's particularly interesting is the influence the Hong Kong market has on Asia in general, and particularly mainland China. So we see Hong Kong as a hub for building out awareness and interest throughout other markets throughout Asia, and it's already working.
So this is from me. 3 years from now, where do you think the largest market is going to be outside of the US for you guys?
A lot of this has to do with regulatory approvals. The CFDA is not an easy entity to get regulatory approval in the China FDA, nor is Japan. It is remarkable how successful ChromaDex has been receiving regulatory approval in the European Food Safety Authority, which could be the most respected of all, as well as Australia, Canada, and the US FDA. But China is a painstaking process. Japan is a painstaking process. And both of those markets we think are big opportunities. So depending on the regulatory process, those could be big markets for us.
Excellent. Okay, so let's go to the Q&A portion. Thank you everyone for your patience. Bob, thank you for the question. Good morning. Aren't there any OTC products called nicotinamide? And I apologize for butchering the pronunciation.
Nicotinamide, of course, yes. Nicotinamide, which is the same as niacinamide, is available. But so is nicotinic acid, which is also referred to as niacin. These are all vitamin B3s. In some regions, people refer to vitamin B3 in general as niacin, and all these subcategories of vitamin B3 are also referred to as niacin. So it's confusing. But what is unique about nicotinamide riboside, somehow by combining ribose to nicotinamide, the efficiency level and the safety level is extremely high in elevating NAD levels inside the cell. The pathway for nicotinamide or niacinamide for entering the cell, the de novo pathway as it's referred to, is significantly less efficient than the NR kinase pathway. And as I said before, the NR kinase pathway opens up specifically when the cell is under stress. So nicotinamide is an interesting ingredient, but nicotinamide riboside is a very, very special.
Our next question is from John, and just to let gentlemen know that we have less than 9 minutes, so we'll kind of go through this as quickly as we possibly can. John asks, what does ChromaDex plan to do with the next generation precursors in their patent portfolio? Thank you for the question, John.
We haven't fully decided because we're letting the science dictate that. We're not taking those precursors and simply putting out on the market because we can. We want to understand how they are distinct from nicotinamide riboside. So there are many possibilities. We might use one of them actually for drug application. We understand that when a cell, like a neuron, for example, when a neuron is depleted in NAD, either because of there's a disease, diabetic neuropathy, or even chemo-induced neuropathy, where NAD levels are heavily depleted, that we think there might be a benefit to elevating NAD levels with a precursor. We might choose to go the drug route with one of those precursors. There's an incredible orphan disease called Cockayne syndrome, where children age so rapidly that they die of old age by the time they're 12 or 13 years old. These kids have almost non-detect levels of NAD. And the National Institutes of Health was able to replicate that disease in mice and show a benefit with True Niagen, with nicotinamide riboside. So you could conceivably go that route in an orphan drug pursuit with one of the other precursors.
Igor asks, can you speak to how the phase 3 COVID-19 or possibly other COVID-19 trial results may affect 2021 revenue?
It's a very good question. Look, that was a phase 3 clinical study. It was financed by a biotech company in Europe called Scandi Bio, and the test was done in Turkey. They have the right to apply for drug status in Turkey if they choose to do that. If they choose to do that and they receive approval, it would obviously have a positive benefit on our revenues. If they do not do that, it is just increased awareness of and efficacy of True Niagen, but we are not able to market to consumers as a COVID treatment because we are not a drug. So it might not have a material impact on actual revenue. And we don't know what what Scandi Bios is doing with regard to drug applications.
And there's a follow-up that Igor is asking, can you comment on how many human clinical study results may be currently stuck in the peer review process?
Quite a few. If you look on clinicaltrials.gov, you'll see there's, I think, 57 clinical trials right now who are either completed or in process. And quite a few of them have completed and are being submitted to journals and are being peer reviewed presently. I don't know the exact number. My guess offhand would be probably 4 or 5.
Respect. We have 5 minutes, gentlemen. So let's go through this quickly. Shane asks, what other formulations are you working on? I think we addressed that. Can you speak about stabilizing NR in liquid? Ooh, that's interesting.
It's an excellent question. Nicotinamide riboside loves water. So much so that when it's exposed to water within a fairly short period of time, I'm talking days and weeks, it breaks apart and becomes nicotinamide and riboside, 2 separate ingredients. So the secret is to keep it intact. Interestingly enough, it is found in trace amounts in milk. Actually, there's high concentrations of it in human mother's breast milk, which is an interesting fact, frankly, that the elixir of life contains nicotinamide riboside. But nature has solved the problem of stability in liquid, but we have not yet been able to replicate that and for it to have a long shelf life as stable. When we do, we think there are opportunities, of course, with Nestle, with Boost, the product that they initially hoped to put it in, as well as other beverages out there. But it is not yet a problem that we have solved, although we are working on it.
Rob, I think this was the question of the day from Bob. How do you differentiate your molecule from the others in your marketing? Great question, Bob.
Well, how you define competition is sort of not an easy question. It's like is a bus competitive with a car or an airplane? There are modes of transportation. So there obviously are clear, blatant infringers of nicotinamide riboside in the marketplace where it's being made in China or India or something. Those are companies that don't have FDA approvals, don't have patents, and their manufacturing process is rushed, and they're just trying to take nicotinamide riboside. In those cases, we're differentiating them by suing them. There are other companies out there who have molecules that are claiming to elevate NAD. One that is gaining popularity is called NMN, nicotinamide mononucleotide. NMN is a precursor to NAD. However, in all NMN essentially is nicotinamide riboside with a phosphate attached to the perimeter. So it's expensive to make NMN because you have to start by making nicotinamide riboside, then you add the phosphate. Then you take in NMN and the phosphate blocks entrance into the cell. There's no transport mechanism in the cell. So in the bloodstream, that phosphate is removed. It turns back into NR in the bloodstream and then enters the cell. So it absolutely makes no sense to take NMN. All it really is extremely expensive, inefficient nicotinamide riboside. But because we have patents and controls over nicotinamide riboside, swarms of competitors are coming into the market touting NMN. It's a significantly inferior product that doesn't have regulatory approvals or patents or the same amount of research studies. But we do believe NMN elevates NAD, just not nearly as well as NR and not as efficiently as NR. And so the key there, and frankly, ChromaDex has some patents around NMN, but we know it's an inferior product, so we don't sell it. And then, of course, there's nicotinic acid, niacin, niacinamide, and I think you guys have heard our narrative for how we distinguish NR from those products.
Rob, we have 4 more questions with 2 minutes.
Okay.
Can True Niagen also be taken with people with autoimmune diseases such as morbus Crohn?
Yes, we know that it's safe, but we don't have a published study on that particular indication. There are some excellent studies on ALS that are clinical studies that are being done, and there are preclinical studies on MS and MS. And so we have reason to believe that there's a therapeutic benefit to autoimmune disease. Again, it's very important that because we're a dietary supplement and not a drug, we cannot market to a disease. The rules are pretty clear. But the studies are out there. And if you go to aboutnad.com, which is a website we maintain but has no direct connection to our commercial product, you can see a listing of all those relevant studies.
And then Lorena asks, why is ChromaDex going to do the marketing themselves under the Walmart contract and not let a larger partner do the marketing, as was the case with Watson?
Right. Well, when we made the deal with Watson's, we knew that we at that time did not have the capability to market a consumer product in Hong Kong. So they wanted the product very much. The deal we made was they got a lower wholesale price in exchange for them doing the marketing, and they've done an extraordinary job, as you can see. Walmart doesn't do those kinds of arrangements. They ask the partner to do the marketing and create the awareness. They simply sell it.
Respect. John, we won't have time. I apologize. We've hit the hour mark. Gentlemen, it is always a pleasure to be with you guys. Thank you for your time and energy today. And Rob, I'm going to let you finish it. Where do people go to get more information on ChromaDex?
So if you want to learn about nicotinamide riboside and all the studies, a good place to go is aboutnad.com. If you're interested in True Niagen specifically, understanding that we cannot market to any disease at all, but if you want to see the research and some background on True Niagen, you can go to trueniagen.com. If you're interested in ChromaDex as a company, obviously chromadex.com. And of course, you can also buy a True Niagen on amazon.com.
Roger. Gentlemen, thank you again for your time. I will be in touch. I'll see you on the other side. And thank you for everyone who tuned in today.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, everybody.
Of course. Bye-bye.